In a vast and powerful kingdom called Persia, there lived a young woman named Esther. She was known for her beauty, yes, but even more for her kindness, her wisdom, and her quiet courage. Esther was an orphan, raised by her older cousin Mordecai, a man who loved God and taught Esther to trust him with all her heart. At that time, King Xerxes ruled over Persia, stretching from India to Ethiopia, 127 provinces in all. The king was powerful, but not always wise. One day, after his queen disobeyed him, he decided to find a new queen. He sent out an order. The most beautiful young women in the land were to be brought to the palace so he could choose a new bride. Esther was among those chosen. Imagine how she must have felt. Taken from her home, thrust into the dazzling, unfamiliar world of the royal palace. But Esther remained true to her character. She was humble, gracious, and wise, and she quickly won the favor of the people around her. Mordecai had warned her not to reveal her Jewish heritage, so she kept it secret, trusting God would guide her. After many months of preparation, Esther was presented to King Xerxes. The moment he saw her, the king's heart was moved. He placed the royal crown upon her head, and Esther became queen of Persia. Yet even as queen, Esther stayed close to Mordecai, listening for his guidance and remembering who she was. Meanwhile, trouble was brewing. A man named Haman had risen to great power in the kingdom, arrogant and proud. Haman demanded that everyone bow before him, but Mordecai refused. He would bow only to God. Enraged, Haman plotted not just against Mordecai, but against all the Jewish people throughout the empire. Haman went to King Xerxes and said, "There is a certain people scattered throughout your provinces who do not obey your laws. It is not in your best interest to tolerate them." With a few clever words and a large bribe, Haman convinced the king to issue a terrible decree. On a certain day, all Jews, young and old, would be destroyed. When Mordecai heard the news, he tore his clothes and wore sackcloth and ashes. He stood at the palace gate, weeping bitterly. Word reached Esther about Mordecai's mourning, and she sent a message to him. Mordecai explained the evil plan and urged Esther to go to the king and beg for mercy. But Esther hesitated. The law was clear. Anyone who approached the king without being summoned could be put to death, unless the king extended his golden scepter. She hadn't been called to see the king in over a month. Her life was at risk.
Mordecai's reply was full of wisdom and courage. Do not think that you will escape because you are in the king's house. If you remain silent at this time, deliverance will arise for the Jews from another place, but you and your family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this? Those words struck Esther's heart. She realized that her position was not an accident. God had placed her there for a purpose. She sent a reply to Mordecai. "Gather all the Jews. Fast for me for 3 days. Do not eat or drink. I and my maids will fast as well. Then, though it is against the law, I will go to the king. And if I perish, I perish." For 3 days, the Jewish people fasted and prayed. Esther prepared herself, not just with royal robes, but with courage and trust in God. On the 3rd day, she approached the king's throne. As she stepped into the hall, her heart raced. Would the king accept her, or would this be her last day? King Xerxes looked up and smiled. He extended the golden scepter toward her. Esther touched it, and the king said, "What is your request, Queen Esther? Even up to half the kingdom, it will be given you." Esther wisely did not rush. She invited the king and Haman to a special banquet. At the banquet, the king asked again about her request, but Esther invited them to another banquet the next day. She was waiting for the right moment, trusting God's timing. That night, the king could not sleep. He ordered the royal records to be read to him. There he discovered the story of how Mordecai had once uncovered a plot to assassinate the king, and realized Mordecai had never been honored for it. The next morning, just as Haman arrived to ask for Mordecai's death, the king asked him, "What should be done for the man the king delights to honor?" Thinking the king meant him, Haman suggested a grand parade, royal robes, and a king's horse. The king agreed, and commanded Haman to do all this for Mordecai. Imagine Haman's humiliation, leading his enemy through the streets, shouting his praises. His hatred burned hotter than ever, but his plans were already unraveling. At the second banquet, Queen Esther finally spoke. She said, "If I have found favor in your eyes, O king, and if it pleases you, spare my life and the life of my people. For we have been sold to be destroyed, killed, and annihilated." King Xerxes was furious. "Who would dare to do such a thing?" he thundered. Esther turned to Haman and said, "This wicked man is our enemy." The king ordered Haman to be taken away immediately, and in a stunning twist of justice, Haman was executed on the very gallows he had built for Mordecai. The king gave Esther and Mordecai permission to write a new decree. It allowed the Jews to defend themselves against any attack. When the day of destruction came, the Jewish people stood strong, and they triumphed over their enemies. To this day, the Jewish people celebrate the festival of Purim, remembering how God turned sorrow into joy and fear into celebration. Gifts are exchanged, food is shared, and the story of Esther is retold. A reminder that even in the darkest moments, God is at work behind the scenes. Esther's story is not just history. It's a living call to courage, to faith, and to trusting that we too have been placed in our moment, in our generation, for a purpose. Mordecai refused to bow to wrong, reminding us when you stand for truth, even in a crowd of compromise, you open the door for God to move through you. King Xerxes shows us that leadership without wisdom is dangerous. In our own lives, who we listen to matters, because wrong voices lead to wrong choices. Esther teaches us that courage doesn't mean you're never afraid. It means you trust God enough to act anyway. Sometimes your breakthrough, your family's rescue, even your generation's future depends on your bravery. And Haman's fall warns us, pride, hate, and plotting against others always backfire. Esther's story calls us today. Stand firm, stay humble, trust God's timing. Your voice, your stand, could be the key to saving more than just yourself. It could change destinies.